I was seemingly retired in Lebanon and woke up overnight completely homeless because the bank stole all our accounts. When you own your money, you actually own your life. When you don't own your money, someone has you by the nuts. I get people that are like, well, I only have a 0.01 Bitcoin. One Bitcoin is 100 million Satoshis. At some point, one sat will have a purchasing power more than $1, for sure. Your entire life has been complete. It's a complete lie. You've been extracted from since the day you were born by a system that was created specifically for that purpose. For the first time in history, they have a competitor that they can't stop anymore. To win in Bitcoin, 2 words. That's it. That is the revolution.
Mr. Tony Yazbek, the founder of the Bitcoin Way, one of my favorite people in the freedom space, the Bitcoin space, the sovereignty space. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us again here today. It is a true pleasure to have you.
Brandon, Happy New Year, man. I'm happy to be here. Always good talking to you, man.
Well, there's no better person to have at a time like this when the world is seemingly melting down. But hey, you know what? Maybe the economic hitman, they've got it all planned for us. The panopticon, the snatch and grabs of world leaders. You know, they've got it all figured out. They're building AI matrix around us, and maybe it's here. Maybe it's already here at this point. So there's no one better to have than you that really is an expert in all these fields. But I would love your thoughts on the things we've seen the last couple of weeks here. Obviously, the Minnesota tax fraud that's going on. That's just, it seems to be the kind of just how the entire system runs, right? And then the stuff going on with Maduro. I would love for you to unpack everything you've been seeing here and we've been seeing the last few weeks.
Well, the thing is, all this insanity that we're reading and hearing about these days, in hindsight, are very expected because, they're all the results of a collapsing system. When there's nothing, useful left to do, the only other option you have is to loot and steal and try to, extract as much as you can from whatever's left. And so the Minnesota tax fraud, I mean, we spoke about this, not that long ago on our own banter. This is just one example of probably thousands of stories that you're going to start hearing about, more frequently because, when the Ponzi breaks, when you get to its expiry date, the truth eventually leaks. Like there's no way to hide it anymore. It has to come out. And so what happens when something this big becomes, headline news? Well, then everyday people, at least more of them, start to pay attention to it. And they're like, hold on a second. Now you've gotten people really upset because now they feel stupid, right? I mean, they've been supposedly going out to work, doing their job as, good citizens, paying their taxes, thinking it's going to, to benefit them some way, somehow down the line. And now they've realized that, they've been taken for suckers. Their money is not doing anything that, they were promised. In fact, it was used to fund looting. So can you imagine like the type of anger people feel when they understand that they've been duped? And that's just one example. Give it a little bit of time when you start hearing more stories about, heists and, corruption of that scale, probably even bigger, that have been going on for decades. Then what happened? But again, these are stories that, in my opinion, are unavoidable. And these are the types of scenarios that, worry me because, when people get, irked that way, when they understand they've been lied to, taken for a ride, well, a lot of people react. When eventually people lose their funds, they react harder. And when everything happens at once, then you've got a very ugly movie that you have no idea, how to deal with. And so this is what we're witnessing. And it's very scary for those that are caught off guard. There's a lot of people that are paying attention, reading the right news, not the mainstream garbage, but, listening to good messaging, following up with what's happening, as much as possible, taking precautions to protect themselves from, what's likely to be coming in at a faster pace.
In your eyes, how does Bitcoin play into the fraud case? I mean, for someone that's just coming into Bitcoin or people that are just kind of learning, what Bitcoin is and what Bitcoin does and what it solves for, how do these things start changing in a Bitcoin world?
Well, look, when things are this bad, usually having conversations about something like Bitcoin becomes easier because, first of all, people are very emotional, they're very pissed, right? And so they want answers and they want answers that make sense, not just, any excuse. And so tying Bitcoin into that story becomes a lot easier, because when you tell someone that your entire life has been complete bullshit, it's a complete lie, that you've been extracted from since the day you were born by a system that was created specifically for that purpose, it starts to make sense, because now there's not much convincing from your part that's required. You're like, what do you think of the Minnesota tax fraud? And of course, then you're going to get, the reactions that you want. And then you tie it into another story that they may not have heard of. Well, this also happened. And then this also happened. And then you tell them, well, what's the common denominator behind all of these stories? It's the money, right? The money that you slave for thinking has value. Well, this money is a worthless piece of paper that is created by a pack of thieves specifically for the reasons that you're reading about now in headline news. But you didn't know about this because, again, every Ponzi at its infancy, goes unnoticed. Everything seems to be working until it doesn't. When everything breaks, everything becomes obvious. And so it becomes easier to explain to them that as of 2009, someone or a group of people created an answer to this problem. And the answer is, on the surface, it sounds very extreme. You have to opt out. And so when people ask me, like, what the hell does that mean, opt out? I'm like, well, everything you've learned or you thought you knew, you have to stop believing in and start moving towards something that is brand new, that the world has never seen before, that you have probably never heard of before. Learn it and start moving in that direction. And they're like, what are you, crazy, man? Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, listen to me. All the problems that you're reading about now are tied into fake money, blood money, the money that was used to fund wars, genocides, crimes, you name it. It's all funded by an unlimited money supply created by pushing a button on a printer. And then, it's a free-for-all for that club that is connected to that printer. You are not part of that club. Neither am I. Neither are 8 billion people. You have to live by the consequences of that money printer, which is, again, created to steal from you. And so if you no longer want to be that sucker, that fool, well, you cannot play on that same chessboard anymore. You have to jump over to another chessboard. And for the first time in history, we have one that cannot be corrupted or manipulated by any living soul. And that is Bitcoin. It comes from the world of tech, rules without rulers, bound by energy, protected by math, protected by cryptography. All words the ordinary person has never heard of before. And so you have to break it down into bite-sized pieces in order to translate this, initial complicated concept into plain English. Stories like this, they prepare people to be more receptive to explanations of that kind. Because if there wasn't such a big scandal out there, people are like, get out of here, man. Like, I have no time for your nonsense. They won't listen to you. But when they're angry because they've been hit, personally, they're more open-minded to sit down and sort of like what it is that you're saying. And so your job, our job, is to put it in a way that makes sense. Again, step by step, break it down into small bite-sized pieces that the ordinary person who has lived their entire life far, far away from all of this can comprehend.
All right, real talk for a second. We all know health insurance is basically a fiat system of healthcare. The biggest debauchery there is. It's expensive, confusing. Somehow you still end up paying hundreds of dollars for a Band-Aid. We moved to crowd sharing almost 5 years ago. It's the best decision we ever made. Instead of sending your money to the insurance company's black hole, you join a like-minded community that directly funds each other's medical bills. Simple, transparent, way cheaper, and that difference you save, you can invest in Bitcoin. It's an amazing win-win. And look, we're part of the Bitcoin community because we believe in freedom, decentralization. Crowd Health brings that same mindset to healthcare. You choose your doctor, you pay in cash, and the community's got your back when the big bills hit. No networks, no middlemen, no bureaucrats trying to approve your care, just people helping people the way it should be. You make decisions about your health. That's as sovereign as it gets. So if you're ready to take the orange pill for your health, this open enrollment, go to Join Crowd Health to get started for $99 for your first 3 months using code Brandon at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code Brandon. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Generational wealth doesn't happen by accident. Bitcoin fixed the money, but it didn't fix the system of protecting and passing it on. Bitcoiners, we have to live in two different worlds. worlds, idealism versus pragmatism. That's where Meanwhile comes in. It's the world's first Bitcoin-denominated life insurance company, regulated in Bermuda and built entirely by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. With Meanwhile, long-term holders can grow and protect their Bitcoin wealth through tax-free policy loans, no repayment obligation, no margin call risk, while making inheritance simple and secure and entirely in Bitcoin. It's about sovereignty, stewardship, and building a legacy that lasts centuries. Because if Bitcoin is forever, your plan should be too. Learn more and sign up with code 4QPBWC at meanwhile.bm. That's meanwhile.bm, code 4QPBWC, or just sign up in the link in the description below. So we just mentioned, offline, the echo chambers that we all find ourselves in social media, just this digital world we live in. And again, I'm sure there's gonna be a few people watching this that question, we get the objections in Bitcoin of thinking that Bitcoin is just the same as all these other altcoins or, something to that effect. So I'd love for you just for a minute to explain why Bitcoin is different than the centralized node of JP Morgan Chase or fiat or these altcoins, and what makes Bitcoin so special, and why someone, like me or you can come on and say, hey, this is inevitable, or hey, make these grandiose claims. So I'd love for you to just to talk about that for a minute.
Bitcoin, for someone who's never heard of it before, who's just, discovering it for the first time, will automatically seem too good to be true. And that applies even to myself. Like, I mean, my story, for those that know it, is that I was, seemingly retired in Lebanon and woke up overnight completely homeless because the bank stole all our accounts. They rug pulled the entire country. And so that led me down the rabbit hole to understand, why this happened, how it's possible, who's responsible, and what have you. And eventually that led me to something like, to Bitcoin, which I also thought was a scam maybe initially. And it takes doing the work, in the sense like reading about it, understanding it, testing it, trying to blow it up yourself. And, in order to really materialize where this thing comes from. You're not going to do it, in 5 minutes, unless you are, researching it yourself, or you are listening to someone that you trust, that has done the research for you, and it's just like explaining it to you in a TLDR manner. And so the difference between Bitcoin and all the other altcoins is that there is no human being behind it. There was at some point, somebody must have created it, but that person is gone now, right? That person or group of people, they're gone. And this whole thing now is run by code that no living soul anymore can manipulate and corrupt. Powered by energy, protected by cryptography. That's it. There's no CEO, there's no government, there's no institution behind it. No one you can call to complain about it, nothing. You have to learn how to use it, and it forces you to assume personal responsibility, because if you make a mistake, your money's gone. That is a fact. Everybody knows this, which is why it petrifies newcomers. They're like, holy shit, I suck on a computer. I'm not going to do this because, if I make a mistake, poof, there goes my money. And that's a valid concern. Except the process of learning this isn't as extreme as most people think initially. It's very easy. It's literally 7 or 8 steps that you have to become familiar with. Repeat them, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and it's done. You end up doing this on autopilot, like driving a car, like having a cup of coffee, like ironing your clothes. Very ridiculously, instinctive behavior becomes part of your everyday life. No big deal. But you have to learn it. But before you learn it, you have to want to learn it. And to want to learn it, you have to understand that this is not a scam. It's not make-believe money. It's nothing that a government can stop or an institution can corrupt or that a tyrant can steal. Like, you have to believe this before you go any further. Because if you still have your doubts, you're still wondering maybe if perhaps you're not going to do anything useful. As more of these fraudulent stories come out and people see for themselves everything around them is in fact the lie, well, then they're going to want an option. And now Bitcoin has 17 years to its history, where governments have tried to attack it and shut it down, and they all failed. People have tried to attack it and and corrupt it, and they have all failed. People have tried to fork it, create their own fancy versions of it, and they've all failed, etc., etc. And here we are today. It's almost a $2 trillion asset, the best performing asset of any asset in human history, and it continues to grow as more and more people understand what it is. And what Bitcoin is a protocol. It's money. Money. Like you have USD, Euro, Yen, whatever. Now you have Bitcoin. The only difference behind that is that this money is not issued by a government or a central bank. It's issued by code, and it's fixed in supply. 21 million. Forever. No matter what you hear, no matter who says what, whether they like it or not, it's 21 million. and nothing's going to change this. So you take that 21 million and it's created for 8 billion people. Of course, there's not enough, right? So people ask, well, how on earth are 8 billion people going to use something that only has 21 million? Well, it's very easy. They're not going to use it on the base layer. That's why, there's layer 2s and layer 3s eventually are going to be formed on Bitcoin. That's how it's going to scale. However, those that are paying attention today and are able to go out, convert their worthless toilet paper into real money and extract it themselves, like holding it in self-custody, because in the first time in history now you can do this. It's the only asset ever known to mankind that you can own. That's another thing. It's not your house, it's not your land, it's not your car. All of these things can be stolen and confiscated from you unless, again, you have an army to protect it, which most people don't. Private keys, digital, ghost. You learn how to use it. You learn how to protect it. No one on this planet can take it away from you, no matter what they say or do, unless you give it up. That is extremely powerful. And because it's money, you are able to transact with it whenever you want, irrespective of the amount, without anybody's consent or permission. You don't need to call your bank. You don't need to put up with their 700 stupid questions. You don't need to worry about the government telling you yes or no. You don't care. Bitcoin was created for sovereignty, to return the power of sovereignty to 8 billion people. And that, my friend, is an incredibly empowering position to be in, because now you are back in full control. And when you own your money, you actually own your life. When you don't own your money, someone has you by the nuts. They don't like you. They don't like what you say. No access to your money. Go figure it out. And so now that this option exists, governments are, finally paying attention to it. Not because they like it. Believe me, not a single government likes Bitcoin, except maybe one or two, or like a very small number of them. But most corrupt governments absolutely hate Bitcoin, no matter what they say, because it was created to obsolete them entirely. And it's working. It's happening every single day, which is why now they're quietly, almost politely, trying to embrace it. Don't mistake the embracing of Bitcoin for the legacy system loving it. They do not. They are trying to find a way to contain it by embracing it, right? Because they know they can't stop it. You cannot kill peer-to-peer technology head on. It's never going to happen. And so you attack it by, pushing a narrative that it's the best thing out there. We absolutely love it, as long as you use our version of it. Bitcoin ETFs, Bitcoin treasuries, the banks custodying your Bitcoin, everything Bitcoin except for two words: self-custody. Because that is the only way you win in Bitcoin, is when you, and you alone, own those private keys, because at that point, you are in control of what you do with them. No one else.
What do you say to people, because this is something that inevitably you get when someone hears all that? They either go one of two directions. They say, well, the CIA created it, or the NSA created it, or you kind of have this thing. It's similar, but it's a little bit of maybe the other side of the same coin, where people say, oh, I get it, Tony, that's great. However, governments of the world are never going to choose a money that's, was privately made, or they don't know the owner. It's something we just don't even know. So governments are never, so it's kind of like two sides of that same coin, where like government created it, so I'm not going to use it. Or people go the other direction. They're like, well, that's great, that makes sense, but no one's ever going to choose that because we don't know who created it.
It's very good that you brought this point up, because I want to touch on it. So the theory about the government created the NSA or whatever other three-lettered agency created, let's go with that story. Maybe it's true initially, they wanted to build something like this that gives them like this godlike superpower over money, more than what they currently had, with their fiat currency. That may have been the initial intention. But somewhere along the line, something went wrong. Either someone in their team grew a conscience and said, you know what, fuck this, and released the whole thing into the wild, open source code. The moment that happened, that theory died, because now the whole code is public, viewable and auditable by anyone. And so if there was a backdoor or something, funny about Bitcoin, we would have heard about it, 15 minutes later, because the entire code is available for anyone to view and download whenever they want. So that is not going to happen. And because Bitcoin's code is so simple, the attack vectors on it are almost non-existent. That's what makes it so powerful. And that's why many attempts to kill Bitcoin have failed, ultimately. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it. So again, Bitcoin is money we have never seen before because it wasn't issued by a government or a central bank. It's money that doesn't need their blessing or permission to exist. And it's money that's going to continue to exist whether they like it or not. In my opinion, we are going towards a world where Bitcoin is going to be a currency with everything else as a viable option for those who want it. For people who want to use the dollar, be my guest, you dummy. You can keep using it. For someone who wants to use the euro, be my guest, you other dummy. You're going to learn the hard way why this was the wrong decision. People have to come to Bitcoin when they're ready, right? Like you can't force someone to have common sense if they're not ready for it. And most people, unfortunately, need to get obliterated or like experience extreme pain before they'll even contemplate listening to something like this. They're like, whatever, man, this happens there and this happens there. It's never going to happen here until they wake up one morning and boom, their ass is on a barbecue and they have access to nothing. That's when they're like, oh shit, okay, now what? Well, now what, my friend? Like now your options are way smaller than they were if you had paid 10 minutes attention and listened to when somebody was trying to explain it to you. That's what. Going forward, we're going to coexist. Bitcoin has to coexist with this world because it's been around for such a long time. You can't just magically turn a light switch and have it disappear, even though that's something I would love for it to happen. As long, I'm sure many others would. It's just, that's not a viable reality. But anyone today, this second, can opt out of a corrupt, rigged chessboard that has zero good intentions towards you and adopt something that is designed to empower you and to return your sovereignty to you, right? And that's Bitcoin. But you have to learn how to use it, how to hold it, how to protect it yourself. Everybody has to come to Bitcoin. At some point they will. How they come to it, through pain or through, common sense, that's up to them. But they need to pay attention to it somehow. And so this is what we're living through now. Every day, more people wake up to Bitcoin. I know because I work with hundreds of folks. And so the questions that we get today are very different from what they were like 3 years ago. A lot of people are finally, thank God, finally starting to understand that Bitcoin is not a speculation. That is the number one mistake people make in Bitcoin. Thinking it's an investment, a get-rich scheme. Oh, I'm going to buy it to make $1 million. No, you're not. If you take that approach, you're going to lose whatever Bitcoin you have because you are, taking a casino mindset with it. You're going to get wrecked at some point. Bitcoin is savings technology. Savings. It's money that you save that appreciates in power, in purchasing power over time. It's not a stock. It's not an investment. It's not a casino chip. It's your money. You save it, you work, you save more of it, you work, you save more of it. And over time, because of its finite supply, as more and more people understand what you finally understood, its value explodes. And because it's only 21 million in a world of 8 billion plus people, that purchasing power is bigger than anything you can possibly imagine.
It's incredible. I'm going to get back to this and the scarcity of Bitcoin and how important this is in a tiny bit, but I want to try to put a bow on some of this because it feels like we're going to a multipolar world. You see a lot of people talking about this, America becoming a regional power, the administration, the people really, and this goes across administrations, and it's just the intelligence agencies, everything in the background working for years, decades, basically putting this together, winding down the existing system, the dollar system that we've been in, Bretton Woods, whatever people want to kind of call it. But your story in Lebanon, seeing what happened there, I think of like hyperinflation. Like people think, especially in America, that this will just last forever. This thing is so amazing that we have all these aircraft carriers, we have all this, we're just so big and powerful, this empire. And you mentioned blood money and what political, fiat units of currency really are at the end of the day. And I think of like hyperinflations. I think of Zimbabwe or Argentina or some of these different things over time, right? Where it's just a loss of confidence. That's all it is, because there's nothing backing the currencies. And that's where we are with America. So I would love your thought, maybe just putting a bow on kind of this part of it, where what you experienced in Lebanon, how these things are so incredibly fragile. And it's like you said, it's just people that are kind of just whistling by the graveyard that are totally unsuspecting of really the danger that is right next to them.
The reason most people use fiat, and of course, I was one of these people at once upon a time, is because that's all you know. Like that's all you know. You're born. Your parents tell you that you go to work, you earn this thing, you put it in a bank, and if you do well, you'll get more of this thing, and this is how life is good. You can finally pay for whatever toys and luxuries that you want by doing the hard work, being honest, etc., etc. But that's not what it is. They were lied to. Their parents before them were lied to, and so the lie continues like it's a daisy chain effect until it breaks, and then someone in that family line get screwed completely. In my case, it was me, right? And so because of this, I dove into finding out why. Like I didn't just accept it. And I'm like, oh well, okay, now I have to get up and like go back to work and repeat the same stupidity I did for the last 3 decades. This is not what someone with common sense does. And so I learned about the realities of money and thankfully found that we have an option that can take us in a completely different direction. But not everybody is going to do what I did. Maybe it's going to take 3 or 4 personal collapses before you react. Like who knows? The difference is we're at a point now where the exits are becoming much, much harder to leave. This is why we start hearing stories about digital IDs. This is why you start hearing about central bank digital currencies. What do you think these are? These are like force fields, like on steroids, designed to imprison you, to choke you to death, to have you, to have this chain around every aspect of your being controlled by a bunch of Looney Tunes who believe they have the right to play God over you. Because to them, you're just like a cattle there for them to extract from you so that they can live for free. And so why do you think there's such a fast-paced push towards digital IDs? Because they don't want 8 billion people to learn the truth about what is actually happening, which is that the fiat world has become completely optional as of 2009. You don't get to $40 trillion worth of debt because you're doing something good for humanity. You don't get to these numbers by being an angel. You do it by plundering, looting, killing, murdering, and all that stuff, and stealing all day long. That's how you get to, and with no regards or accountability. That's how you get to these absurd numbers. And this is the reality of every fiat currency out there. So until people personally get stuck, most people are not going to read the news or listen to messages or go out of their way to listen to reason. They have to wake up again themselves one day and find out that they can't do anything, or that they accidentally said something and they've got 2 assholes at the door coming to put them in jail. Until you live through that, you're not going to like most people, at least initially, will not listen to someone warning them about that reality. They have to see it happen before they believe it. And this is the part that people like us, you, me, and like millions of others are hoping to prevent as much as possible. Because once you get stuck in that panopticon, you're screwed. You're finished. It's going to be extremely difficult to exit, because who's going to trade their freedom for your shithole? No one, right? Like if you wake up one day and your savings have been converted to a central bank digital currency, which I believe is going to happen to a lot of folks through that genius stablecoin act, that's exactly what's going to happen.
There's one thing more important than Bitcoin: the time you have and the people and relationships you build. In a world full of noise, the real signal is meeting with other Bitcoiners IRL, finding Bitcoin-only events, connecting face-to-face, and supporting the circular economy through Bitcoin-friendly merchants around the world. That's exactly what Club Orange is built for. Build your circle. Support Bitcoin-only companies. The only place in the world you can find all that in one spot is the Club Orange app on iOS or Android. Go to cluborange.org, what used to be the Orange Pill app, or scan the code here. Now that you have your hardware wallet, the key that it generated needs to be stored in something forever that can withstand fire, flood, nuclear fallout, checks, hockey pucks. This is your 12-word C plate, your 24-word C plate. After a lot of people asking for your 12-word C plate, here it is, stampseed.com, code Brandon for 15% off. After everything that's going on in the world, fires we've seen in the Pacific Palisades, what we've seen happen in Hawaii, everything gone. Titanium seed plates withstands everything. Your posterity will thank you. It only takes a few minutes. Don't let these little things, these small investments, scare you from the most important aspects of Bitcoin and the first money we have ever conceived here on earth. Stampseed.com, code Brandon for 15% off.
Everything you are learning in this episode is completely moot and does not matter. If you hold Bitcoin and are still leaving it on an exchange or sharing keys and your KYC information with a third party, this is your wake-up call now. You are only self-sovereign if you alone hold the keys to your wealth. 100% self-custody sounds daunting at first. Believe me, I lost 2 years of massive gains over a decade ago because I was worried about taking the few minutes it took to understand self-custody. And that's exactly why you need to talk to my friends, Tony Yazbek and his team at the Bitcoin Way. We just interviewed Tony recently, has over 80,000 views, an overwhelming response. People love his story and the simplicity he shares of how easy it is to custody and take ownership of the greatest money we've ever seen. They'll train you to do it right the first time. Head on over to thebitcoinway.com/Brandon to schedule a free 30-minute consultation today. Their 5-star rated service is exactly what you need. Quit sitting on your hands like I did and get started today. Again, that's thebitcoinway.com/BRANDON.
Yeah, and that was what I was going to ask you next. Actually, it was just, again, like the AI, the rise of this. Whether is this just the next ESG thing? Is it just kind of the next Wall Street narrative? Obviously, the CBDCs, the digital IDs, digital passports. I've been seeing a bunch of videos from just across the world, but also across the country as well, for digital IDs, mobile IDs, all these different things, and it seems great and seems convenient. But it's, again, are we really bifurcating into these two worlds of people that see the road, again, people have seen the meme, obviously, of Bitcoin and freedom up the hill here, and then, or is it CBD and slavery and darkness and the AI panopticon? It feels like that's where we're headed.
Listen, to me, Bitcoin and AI are ideas whose time has come. You cannot stop these, either one of them. You cannot stop them. You've got some crazy people who believe they can, but that's just what they're thinking. Their reality is open code, right? And especially, for example, when it comes to AI, the learning algorithms were created. What these manifest into later on is anybody's guess. They can control the companies that they own that are involved in AI. But AI in and of itself is code, free code that anyone, you can use and turn it into anything that comes to your mind. And so that decentralization of AI is a superpower that no one can control. And it's both good and bad, because like any piece of technology, you put it in the hands of someone with good intentions, they'll create wonders. You put it in the hands of an idiot, you'll create a nightmare. But the code itself doesn't care who uses it. It's just there to be used. Same thing for Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't discriminate. Bitcoin's for everyone. The good, the bad, the ugly, the retarded. It doesn't care. It's peer-to-peer money, right? And so you have people who use it for good, and you have stupid people that use it for bad. You cannot control who uses it. This is what makes it so powerful. This is what makes it so neutral. And this is why I believe it will 100% become the future of money and the world neutral reserve currency asset, because it's the only one eventually, after probably a million attempts to find other solutions that will fail, it'll be the only one that every nation state will be able to trust, because they know no other state has an advantage over them, by using it. And so same thing with AI. You can try to contain it. You can try to say it's bad and it's going to kill humanity and all that other rubbish. None of it is true. Like any piece of tech, again, if I take AI and I build an entire machine and create something wonderful with it, millions of people are going to adopt it. But if you give it to the hands of someone else who creates, I don't know, like something that causes death and destruction, well, then it ultimately becomes a threat. And you have to be very careful about the narratives around these stories, because anybody, with enough resources can create a story just to push out, a false narrative. Even with that, I don't believe you can stop this. And if things get bad enough, you want to hope that there's enough people on the side of good to outmatch those on the side of bad. And as a human being, I am very optimistic on that, because, there's a lot of intelligent people out there don't want to live in a bad world, right? Like they want to build a system where stupid people have a very small rope, like they're very limited with what they can do. And so Bitcoin at some point will be that solution for money. So essentially what it is the torrents for money, Bitcoin, right? You can't stop this. And when people understand that they don't need, crazy people's permission to use it, they're never gonna let it go. Like never. It's going to become like the elixir of life to 8 billion people. It's just a question of when it clicks, when they understand this. The faster things deteriorate around the globe, the quicker that day comes for more folks. And I'm very excited about this because I genuinely believe we are headed towards that world.
People don't talk about this a ton. And I feel like, people just say Bitcoin needs AI or AI needs Bitcoin, and what's AI going to use? It's going to use Bitcoin, and, all these things. But in the technical aspect, obviously, is maybe easier to see, but living in this world with smart machines or things of that nature, we'll just kind of call it that. What is Bitcoin really doing that's going to help humanity in that sense? Is it purely an incentive structure where I don't need to rape and pillage all these people with my AI panopticon? Now, because of Bitcoin, it flips the incentives, obviously, and puts consumers and producers on the same side of the table. Like, how does that, from an incentive perspective, is that how you see it, I guess?
Well, look, this is a very interesting question you bring up because, there's many ways you can look at this. The way I see it is that AI is going to push us towards a deflationary world, right? Like when you've got robots and humanoids doing pretty much everything and they're not getting paid, per hour or per year. They're just producing, the highest quality of goods and services. What are you paying for? Like, what are we paying for? And there's like, if you really want to like take it further, if you're living in a world where everything is essentially free or almost free, then what do you need money for, right?
Yep.
And so that's like probably like very far away, but I can see where that at some point might make sense. And
Yep.
so Bitcoin
Well,
fits
Elon
into
Musk
this,
just brought it
fits
up.
into that narrative.
Yeah. Elon Musk just brought it up a couple weeks ago, right? I mean, that's that Henry Ford thing. And then Elon Musk just brought it up a couple weeks ago and said, hey, we're going to have an energy money. Maybe it is Bitcoin, and maybe there's someday where we don't even have money at all. So to your exact point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then if he says it, then I guess I'm thinking in the in the right direction, which is great because for me it's logical.
Yeah.
When you've got machines doing everything to perfection and are constantly learning to continuously improve on whatever it is that they're doing, and they're providing it for free, well, then what are you going to do with your time? Like when everything is done, you do whatever you want, right? So that money, that Bitcoin, that, permissionless money will be used probably to, I don't know, man, like that's why they call it the Renaissance, like to recreate things that, we haven't seen for such a long time, to build citadels, to build things that, there's no chance or hope of ever seeing in the current situation today, right? That's the type of world of abundance and deflation that, I think we're headed towards, which is why, I wake up very excited knowing that I'm blessed and fortunate enough to live in a world where Bitcoin, is still at the stage that it's at now. It's like prehistoric early, man. It's like, can you imagine how lucky you are to be born right now? Especially those that are born, closer to the 2009 year, when something like this, which I call like the ninth wonder of the world, probably eclipses all of them because of its magnanimous impact on the world, uncontrollable money. And so being able to be part of this, like we're part of history, like we are Bitcoin. Bitcoin exists because we want it to exist. We protect it. We fight off all the attacks against it by continuously evolving the code, by continuously protecting the code, by continuously teaching people that this is a viable option to them. Like we are the reason Bitcoin has grown to like a $2 trillion asset, and which I believe will probably absorb every single asset in the universe is going to find its way funneled into it at some point.
Yeah. Do you think that it's, because I think this is even inside Bitcoin, people are debating this all the time, right? Where's the end game for Bitcoin? Is it that it's got to account for every asset on Earth, or is it just currency in the sense that's one half of every trade, and that's the end game where it's maybe 450 trillion of the 900 trillion in assets, or does it have to account for all 900 trillion in assets? And because it is money, it is the currency, it's the reserve asset, it's the money, it's everything we denominate life in. Is that like, where do you see it? I guess at the end, it could be 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now, but where do you see kind of like the end game for Bitcoin as it accounts for things?
It's gonna take over everything, as far as I'm concerned. Like, why wouldn't it take over everything? Like, why would anyone keep their assets denominated in rubbish? It wouldn't make sense. But you're going to see this gradually happen. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen, as things break. People are like, okay, well, what's the best performing asset? Like, people come in to Bitcoin with what they know. So a lot of people, they come in thinking of it as a speculation. All right, well, this thing has outperformed this and this and this and that. Okay, that's the better choice. So they come in with that limited understanding. And then hopefully at some point they learn something new and they're like, hold on a second, well, this is a lot bigger than what I initially thought it was. And then, they improve, in that way. And at some point, 900 trillion assets of that are out there, and probably more by the time, we get to that moment in time, they're going to have to go into something that actually cannot be corrupted or debased or or manipulated by anyone anymore. This is why I believe that all of them end up on peer-to-peer money, sound money.
What do you think? We just mentioned a minute ago that about people being late, and that's an objection that people talk about all the time. Of and I've heard it recently. Just in the last couple of months, I've had friends, family members, whatever, and they say, well, hey, you got in at a great time, years ago or whatever, and I'm late to it, so whatever, some type of objection in that sense. But I would love for you to touch on that and expand on that, but also just how scarce, and again, kind of putting a bow on all this, because you mentioned there's only 21 million Bitcoin and there's 8 billion people. So there's this infinitely divisible part that people miss and they have a hard time grappling with as well. And we talked about this, a year ago, and how scarce 0.01 Bitcoin is, right? 1 million sats today is so cheap with your USD trash tokens versus what it will be someday. So I'd love for you to just kind of expound on this a little bit and really drive this home for someone that's worried about, hey, I'm late to the game.
First of all, no one's late to the game. In fact, you're the farthest thing from late to anything Bitcoin related, because, no, most people are still not paying attention. When people, come out with statements like this, to me, it says that they're still thinking in fiat and dollars, euros, or whatever it is. And, they look at the current sticker price of whatever, 90,000, and they're like, well, I can't afford this. The thing is, no one needs to buy one Bitcoin in its entirety in order to get started. Bitcoin is savings technology. So you buy whatever you want, or rather, I don't like even using the word buying, because what you're doing is that you're upgrading your savings from that worthless paper to actual sound money. And so you upgrade your worthless paper to money, and it's your savings amount, right? Like, you treat Bitcoin as a savings, not as an investment. That savings, though, over time appreciates in its purchasing power because of its scarcity, 21 million. So imagine when more people figure this out and they also start saving. There's not enough for everyone. In fact, the days of buying that Bitcoin, that we're talking about now, and holding it in self-custody, that's going to disappear very, very quickly, simply because of its finite supply. There's just not enough. And so that, like, ginormous generational wealth that everybody keeps referring to when they mention Bitcoin, that's going to be limited to the small number of folks that understand Bitcoin today or in the last 17 years. Because once that's gone, you're never going to see it again. And unfortunately, today, the wrong people understand this as well. And by that, I mean governments, institutions, and all these folks. And so they want as much of it as possible, because 95% of the supply is mined already. And so, they want as much of it as possible, and they will do whatever they can to separate unknowing folks from their Bitcoin. So how is the scarcity a plus? Because if you have a tiny amount of Bitcoin, number-wise, and that's another mistake people make, is that they make fun of that little number that they see on the screen. I get people that are like, well, I only have a 0.01 Bitcoin. It's a pathetic little number. What's that going to change in my life? I'm like, you're not thinking about this, with the right lens. One Bitcoin is 100 million Satoshi. So your 0.01 represents what? A million sats, right? And so at some point, one sat will have a purchasing power more than $1, for sure. At that point, that small little number that you're laughing at now, well, now it's a significant, it's a significant amount that's available to you. And if you've continuously saved your revenue into something like this, well, you can just do the math and see that your purchasing power goes up forever, because the fiat denomination is going, like, you'll keep adding zeros to your screen if you're denominating in dollars and euros, because that dollar or euro is headed to zero and you're going the opposite direction. A very popular example is that of the house. Like people say, like 5 years ago, they purchased a house with 200 Bitcoin. Today, they can purchase the same house with 5. And you give it a little bit more time, then you'll buy it with 2, and then eventually you'll buy it with a 0.5, etc., etc. The scarcity of Bitcoin is what gives it that unlimited purchasing power that we have never known. And so we are not living in that future yet. So it's very hard to wrap your brain around, that concept sometimes, unless, again, you've done the work, you understand what Bitcoin is, what it represents, and so forth. Then when it clicks for you, you already move your time and energy into that future, and you forget about the legacy. Like, everyone who's understood Bitcoin the way I'm describing today doesn't complain about money. I've yet to meet a Bitcoiner that's understood Bitcoin in the last 3 or 4 years that complains about money. Why? Because their purchasing power has gone up. For them, things aren't expensive. In fact, things for them are cheaper. If you're still saving in that worthless paper, things are unaffordable. And they're going to continue getting unaffordable at a faster pace, because there is no way anyone's going to be able to fill that leaky bucket faster than the rate of the leak itself. Expect all sorts of craziness to become, headline news. And as the world continues to decay, you're going to see more extreme attempts to funnel you into a new version of that legacy system where you have no escape. That is why we're seeing that acceleration of dystopia everywhere. So a lot to unpack here, man. Like witnessing the world in the way it is today is not something I thought I would ever be able to see and be a part of. But yet here we are. And thankfully, we have enough, individuals, good individuals, doing the work, trying to push out the message, always there to lend a helping hand and to guide as many folks as possible, on the right side of history before they experience hell itself.
I could not agree more. And it's community, right? I mean, it's the average of the 5 people you hang around most. Show me your friends, I'll show you what kind of person you are. And that's why, I'm such a believer in your company. I mean, I'm grateful that we partner together. Club Orange, Brian Dement and Matteo Pellegrini, people that have the freedom ethos, but community is huge, and having people around you, because that's part of this, right? Dragging your friends, your buddies, and not leaving a man behind. And that's kind of the ethos. And we all pick each other up and reinforce those thoughts. So it's just so incredibly important to surround yourself with people like that. And it feels like too, we need to reframe our thoughts, right? And Knut Svanholm, I have the book over here somewhere, but Everything Divided by 21 Million, like we could price the world in sats and get away from the dollar system, could we not?
Absolutely, and there are many tools available this minute that let you do this. There's a very popular widget for your browser. I think it was created by TFTC. I can't remember the name of it, but basically what it does, once you install, it's a free extension. You install it in your browser, and every time you hit a page that has like a price, it puts the Sats equivalent right next to it. And so I've had that installed for a while now, and over time, you see your Sats denomination, going down while the dollar number keeps going up. And so when you have this visually in front of you 24/7, you're smiling every time, you wake up, because you visually see your financial situation improving in real time. And yes, of course, when the fiat price drops a little bit, the numbers change, but when you zoom out, there's more upside than downside, because a lot more people are finally realizing that Bitcoin is the exit to real money, right? And so the steps to living on a Bitcoin standard are also decreasing compared to 17 years ago. It's almost like a no-brainer to live on a Bitcoin standard. I know, because we live on a Bitcoin standard, and we know thousands of others that are doing it as well. There's a lot more merchants accepting it. Every day, hundreds more, start adopting it. People are building circular economies. Like, for example, just compared to 3 years ago, almost 90% of the things I need are paid in Bitcoin. And for those, where I still have to pay it in fiat, well, I just pay that specific thing, and then I forget about the fiat world. Like I don't think about it anymore, more than like this temporary thing that I have to deal with, and then you move on. And so as time progresses, the tools become simpler to use. Self-custody is not rocket science. It really isn't. You don't need a tech background. You don't need to be a cryptographer to understand all this. Simple 7 or 8 steps. Once it clicks, you repeat them 2, 3 times, and then it becomes normalized in your everyday life. You're doing it on autopilot. Further, as time progresses, those steps, those 7, 8 steps, become less. They become 3, 4 steps. And at some point, it'll be like a click of a button. You've got your entire ecosystem secured and locked down and ready for use, 24/7. We're seeing this happen. It's extremely exciting. I mean, we at the Bitcoin Way, we test tons of tech that's out there, right? Whether it's hardware, software, and we're continuously fine-tuning our approaches to simplify that entire infrastructure for those that are coming in, so that the learning process, first of all, is a lot of fun. It's completely interactive. Like you cannot screw this up, because we literally handhold you through all of it. Press here, do this, do that sort of thing. And at the end of it, we train you on how to make this part of your everyday life. And at some point, you won't need us, you won't need anyone. You'll be doing this as if you've been doing it your entire life, and then you'll go out and spread the word to everyone that you care about, because you're so happy with yourself and how things have improved for you that you instinctively want to go tell everybody around you, and then you're going to have to deal with with them thinking like you're on cheap drugs, until they finally they finally listen to you and then improve their situation as well. Extremely exciting times. Like I don't like for me, I don't understand why people don't get excited about this, because it's like almost like someone handing you the universe's biggest lottery ticket, is and requiring you to simply dedicate just a few hours of your time to understand how to use this lottery ticket, right? And so I'm very bullish on the future, man. Like, I mean, you stay in Bitcoin long enough, you understand, how the game is played and what all the noise and the bullshit out there is about, and you completely dismiss and ignore it. Like it stops, you become so desensitized to it that, when you read the news, you're almost like smiling from a very far distance, because that can't touch you anymore. Like, you are no longer part of that world, because you have upgraded into, like, you're vibing on a much higher wavelength now, and you are just bringing in more people into that future with you. And incredibly exciting, incredibly bullish. I'm very optimistic on everything that's coming, because again, I understand the tech and I play with these toys and that ecosystem that's being built by some incredibly intelligent people. And so if somebody were to spend just 10 minutes in this world, just, like, think of it as like a preview to a movie, you'd be bullish just as much as I would.
All right. First, I want to hit something. I want to talk about Michael Saylor. Get your thoughts on the Bitcoin Treasury companies, Wall Street, and kind of the takeover that we've seen over the last year or two, the ETFs, everything. But first, I want to hit one more objection with you, and this is something that we see a lot too, obviously, and I'm sure you guys get hit with this, being a technology company and helping people with education, which is Bitcoin will be replaced by a better technology. And you kind of mentioned this earlier, but I would love your thoughts on what happens when someone says that
Bitcoin is going to be replaced by something better.
Yeah.
Maybe, but to become better than Bitcoin is definitely not a threat, because Bitcoin is so incredibly empowering that if there's something better than it, it's going to make you exponentially more empowered than Bitcoin does. So if that's were to happen one day, I welcome it. And if it does, it'll probably be the next, like, an upgrade to the existing protocol. I personally don't think that's going to happen, because Bitcoin is already so revolutionary in and of itself, that for something, to eclipse that, I don't know, man, like, not in our lifetime at all.
My little add-on to this is I always explain it to people that people think Bitcoin is just a singular technology, whereas it, like you just said, it's a protocol. It's a handful of technologies, in essence, aggregated, basically together on top of each other to create a protocol. Is that the thing that you see people missing a lot of the time?
Yeah, of course. Bitcoin is, think of it as the internet, right? And it's like when the internet was first born, like, I don't know how many years ago, there were literally two apps available for everybody who understood the internet. There was one email program and there was one browser, Netscape and Eudora. Everywhere you went, people were using those same two apps. And then at some point, everything exploded into like 1 billion apps. Take all of this and multiply it by like 1 million. That is the world that will be built on sound money. So Bitcoin today is like those two apps at the beginning of the internet days. What is coming to Bitcoin will make that look like a pin drop, because again, Bitcoin is the elixir of life to 8 billion people. It's not optional. You need money to live. You need money to communicate. You need money to transact. You're going to want to learn how to use this. And of course, the tools are going to become a lot easier for you to do so. But the days of generational wealth, those, that shiny little thing that everybody gets excited over when they first learn about Bitcoin, that is going to disappear maybe this year, simply because of the finite supply of Bitcoin. And believe me when I tell you that the attempts to steal it are going to continue to rise as its value continues to appreciate. Because everybody wants the best thing out there, but there's only a limited supply of it. There's no end to the creative ways to steal it. And AI will play against you. So if you're not upgrading your skills to pay attention to what's coming, you can easily be suckered into giving up your coins or losing them yourself.
Wild world. And that's why it's important to speak with you guys. I mean, truly, this is why it's important to speak with you and your team and what you guys do. It's going to be massive going forward. What is your thoughts on Saylor, the Bitcoin treasury companies? I know you've had, we've talked about this over time over the last year or two together. We talked about it a year ago, last time you were on. And it seems to me, again, that we've lost the plot, just the narrative over the last year or two with ETS. We've lost our focus. The focus has just been on USD price, and a lot of building hasn't happened, and a lot of education hasn't happened because people feels like people have been sitting back and waiting for Wall Street to do the heavy lifting. How do you see everything that's going on right now?
Listen, I don't have any bad opinions of Michael Saylor. I remember his early work. I think he was an incredible contributor to the Bitcoin space. I think he's an incredibly smart businessman. I have nothing bad to say about him. Lately, I don't agree with his message. He may have his own reasons why he does what he does, but I don't have to agree with it, and that's fine. He does his thing, and people who understand Bitcoin do their thing. Why I don't agree with him is because his approach is just extending the lifeline of the very system that Bitcoin was created to replace. Now, people might argue that you need the institutional money to get the Bitcoin adoption and what have you. And maybe to a large extent that's true, because retail is fucking fooling around on another galaxy doing God knows what other than paying attention to what they should be, right? Because it was created for the everyday people, but everyday people, God knows what they're doing, anything that other than this. So of course the institutions are going to come in and take over the space. But the products that they're pushing, legacy finance in Bitcoin, is not Bitcoin. All they are traps to keep you in a world of permission, risk, and dependence. And a lot of people that don't want to think and just want, okay, let me put my money here because I'm going to get more of it. That's what they autopilot into, because that's all they've known, right? No thinking, no rationalizing, nothing. Just like, oh, he told me to do this, let me do it. Just like, a parrot. Just copy, paste, end of story. That is not Bitcoin. And at some point, I suspect all of these people are going to get screwed at some point. Because when all that's Bitcoin that's in hands of centralized institutions, there's no difference than your money in a bank. You don't own it. You can't control it. You have no say over it. So if, oops, we got a cyber attack out of nowhere one day, oh, well, it's them who caused it, but it still sucks because your Bitcoin's gone. Expect all this bullshit. That's a risk no one needs to take. All it requires is for you to understand that now you can be the bank. You should be in full control. That is what Bitcoin was created for. But again, like I said earlier, Bitcoin's for anyone. Bitcoin doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care if you're dumb or smart. It doesn't care. It just exists. TikTok next block every 10 minutes. To win in Bitcoin, it's 2 words: self-custody. That's it. That is the revolution. Nothing else, and I literally mean nothing else out there, is a win in Bitcoin. Not the ETFs, not the treasuries, not the leverage solutions using Bitcoin as wrappers. I'm not a fan of borrowing against your Bitcoin, even though a lot of people, talk about it like it's the biggest invention since sliced bread. It's a risk, and that risk exists on the same chessboard that you don't control. When Bitcoin went from 126 to 100 in 2 hours, how many people got screwed? How many of them actually admitted that they got screwed? Not a single one, right? But they attribute it all, but this was because of, there's nothing because of anything. When you're dealing with a system that has an infinite amount of resources at its disposal, whose one and only objective is to separate as many people from their coins, these are the carrots that they dangle in front of the dummies. And so those that don't think and do the work to learn why this is all garbage fall for the same traps. And when their turn comes, not if, when their turn comes, they're like, oh, but it's all a scam. There's no scam. You chose the shortcut. You didn't want to learn anything. You didn't want to listen to reason. You got screwed now. Congratulations. Deal with the consequences. Next time, you're likely not going to repeat that same stupid decision, right? And so this is the messaging that we're trying to push and remain consistent with, because no one needs to take that risk. If you need to borrow or do something, then you have to do it specifically for that purpose, not just as a general blanket decision thinking you're doing an intelligent thing. You're not. Because as long as you remain living in a rigged system, you're going to get screwed at some point. Nobody makes a career of going to the casino. You might win 1 or 2 times. Given enough time, you come out empty-handed with your hands in your pocket. That's what's going to happen. And so, again, it takes, like, you have to change your mindset. You have to understand what this is, and you have to stop keeping yourself addicted to bad habits. This is why it's hard, because it's a workout, right? It's a mental workout. And so it's going to take time. I don't think people have much time. That's the problem, is that those that are paying attention now will be fine. And those who aren't, well, they're going to wish they had.
Isn't that the truth? So I was just going to one of my last couple was going to be actually, what's the single best thing someone can do? And you kind of just answered it, right? Study Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, self-custody Bitcoin, and stay away from all the nonsense, and stay around a community of people that's going to help you continue doing that. We talked about this a year ago, and it's still coming to a head. Christine Lagarde just came out with her, ridiculous, little banknote Christmas video she made. We got new banknotes, and we're going ahead with the CBDCs. And it's just funny, Tony, like, who did anyone ask for the CBDCs? Again, we keep going down this path where no one's asking for said thing from the government, yet they just keep, oh, hey, we're giving this to you. And then they're over here at the same time telling you how they're going to freeze your savings. And this is in the existing system, let alone the CBDC world we're about to enter. So I would love your thoughts just on this. And also, again, between the stuff you've seen in Lebanon, the stuff we're seeing in Venezuela, the tax fraud going on in Minnesota, and just on and on and on, state after state, country after country, is this not the end game here in America too? And I think this is the point, because half of our viewers are in America, that people need to have this point pounded into their head that this is coming to America, coming to a store, a bank near you at some point in the near future.
Well, look, there's been a system created to steal, censor, and control that was built decades ago. That system has been living off of us for a very long time. That's all they know. That's all they know, is to extract value from us. The difference is, back then, we thought this was just how the world works, until we got to a point where it stopped working. And now people are understanding that something is wrong, and they want a solution to it. And because we're at the end of this Ponzi, these people who have been parasitical their entire lives, they're desperate to find a solution to remain in the positions that they are. But for the first time in history, they have a competitor that they can't stop anymore. Bitcoin is that new sheriff in town, right? And there's no prisoners. Like, you're not going to get rid of Bitcoin. Your only hope in hell is to convince enough people to stay away from it. Intelligent people will ignore you no matter what you say. You can't make it illegal. People are going to laugh at you. You can't ban it. People are going to laugh at you. You can't do anything with it other than accept that it's not going away. And so the more people wake up to this, and they are, because their situations are deteriorating every single day. That's why I'm saying that the incentives will win. And there's no legacy system that has incentives that can outperform Bitcoin. Bitcoin is freedom. That power, there's no centralized system that can give it to you. It's not part of their DNA, right? You want your freedom to do whatever you want. They want to choke you so that you do whatever they want. What's going to win at the end of the day? Like even the dumbest, most stubborn human being at some point is going to say, you know what, enough is enough. I'm going there now. Fuck you. I don't need this shit anymore, right? So it's just a question of, how tolerant to pain you are. Most people, sadly, aren't even aware that any of this is going on. And so initially, if they come up with a central bank digital currency, a lot of people are just going to adopt it because they don't know the difference between that and what they have now. They're going to tell them, okay, well, instead of using your blue card, now you use this green card, and that's how it works. And they'll be like, oh, okay, all right, cool. Except one day they're going to post something online somewhere, and that green card is going to stop working. And they're going to be like, why is it not working? Well, because you said I don't like this. And then they'll be like, well, what the hell is wrong with you, man? It's like as if like the light bulb will finally go off, like in 10 years after they've been completely screwed. It'll finally go off. At some point, everybody wakes up, right? The two systems will coexist. There'll be those that are free and incredibly empowered to do whatever the hell they want, the unstoppable ones, and there'll be those that are stuck. And those that are stuck are going to do anything under the sun to go to the other side. Except that's why I said earlier, it's going to be almost impossible, because who's going to trade that world for this shithole at that point? It's going to be extremely expensive, and the incentives won't make any sense. That usually turns into violence, because now people are desperate. Like, well, I don't want to stay here anymore, so I'm going to do whatever it takes to get myself out of here and into here. That scenario is extremely dangerous, because now you're relying on people that are on pure adrenaline and are angry in ways you've never known before. I'm telling you, it's a very ugly picture. I lived it for almost a year. So I don't wish that on anyone, but I just don't see how that's avoidable. Hopefully I'm wrong. I just don't see how I'm wrong.
What is the biggest attack vector for Bitcoin in your mind? Like what there's the Nostr versus core debate, the mempool stuff, there's protocol risk, as always. 17 years, we just passed, Bitcoin's 17th birthday. Obviously it's always being attacked. It's always been attacked. There's psychological operations going on, narrative warfare, Wall Street, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think? What's your biggest fear, I guess, about Bitcoin or just the space?
Look, the only way Bitcoin fails is that if nobody uses it. It's the only way it fails. From a tech perspective, I don't think there's any way to stop this. It's peer-to-peer tech. You cannot stop this. There's been far less important things that are still thriving today, like the file sharing of music and movies and all that stuff. You're not going to do that with money. Let's forget it. Yeah. The attacks that I see happening are the embracing of Bitcoin by the legacy institution. These are, for me, are like flat out attacks, because they're hoping to convince enough folks to use their version of Bitcoin, which keeps them dependent on them and away from what's actually the reason why Bitcoin was created, was to empower you and restore the power to your hands. And so that's the attack. If you look at the performance of ETFs, you can see that, holy shit, man, there's a lot of money going into it. And what that tells me is that people are not thinking. They're just doing what they've always known because it's convenient. But that convenience is going to be the most expensive mistake these folks are going to learn at some point, right? So these are the attack vectors. I don't think Bitcoin's going to die. There's too many people out there that are using it to survive, right? They're not most people using Bitcoin today as money, because that's the only way it remains decentralized and secure, is that if it's used as money. And because there's enough people doing that, that's why it has value. If it was only a store of value, it'll fail. That's been said many times before. But because it's being used as money, you can't stop it, right? Like, how many people can buy and hold Bitcoin? I don't know, 2%, 3%, maybe. How many people can use it as money? 8 billion people. What's easier to stop? The more people are adopting this as money, and we see this because it's happening, the more value it has. The reason we're still seeing that, that fiat price fluctuation is because there's too many people that are treating it as a speculation. But even that has an expiry date because of its finite supply, right? Like, each time you notice that the lows get higher, like it drops, but that low is higher and higher each time. And at some point, like these games will end simply because like you can't afford it anymore. You just can't do it. So if people wanted that number to go up to 10, 100 million, it's very simple. Get more people to buy Bitcoin, hold it in self-custody. You'll see that price skyrocket tomorrow. But as long as people don't do that, the retail, by people I mean like the retail crowd, which is, again, on that distant galaxy doing God knows what, you get like 5% of them to buy a small amount of Bitcoin, hold it in self-custody, and just watch how quickly that number changes. But as long as more people speculate and like depend on Wall Street and all that other that system to do the heavy lifting for them, well, it just prolongs the process. It doesn't kill it or affect it in any way. It just delays it, just prolongs it. But for those that understand it, it's a Christmas present. Whenever the price dips, someone who understands that Bitcoin is the real money, the real savings, they jump on it. They don't get upset. Those that get upset because they don't understand anything and they're here for the wrong reasons. That number of people is decreasing. That's why the lows, again, are getting higher and higher and higher. And at some point, the retail crowd will be like, hey, how come nobody told me about this Bitcoin thing? Yeah, okay. Like just wait for it, because I can just see that happening. And then they'll call you lucky. Yeah, you just, bought this little thing and you sat on your ass and now you're rich. This is what they'll tell you.
So true. No truer word spoken, that's for sure. But Tony, this has been amazing. I would love for you to talk for a second about the Bitcoin way, and we've kind of circled, your company, this whole talk, and talked around a lot of things that you guys help with. But I'd love for you to tell people how they can find you, and also, what you guys can help with.
Absolutely, the Bitcoin way was created specifically to help folks understand everything that we've been talking about, to understand Bitcoin first and foremost before you do anything with it, and to remove the fear of the tech from using Bitcoin. We've curated the entire process. We test everything under the sun that's Bitcoin here internally, and we're continuously fine-tuning the process. So if somebody coming in, never seen Bitcoin, never touched Bitcoin ever, and wants to become like an expert at it, we will help you do it by literally hand-holding you through everything. Press here, do this, do that. We will babysit you, spoon feed you, whatever you want to call it, so that you go from point A, knowing nothing, to point being as comfortable as we are using this, irrespective of the amount. And so our services really focus on the journey to self-sovereignty, which we've categorized into three. One, protect the money, real money, Bitcoin in self-custody. Then we help you with cybersecurity. We have a whole suite of services around that, protecting your digital footprint, privacy, de-Googled phones, something that's incredibly powering to remove the spy from that $1,000 device that you use all day long. And of course, the third part is you, protecting you, the individual, by helping you move to jurisdictions that actually want you, that don't treat you like a criminal, that don't have any resentment against you because you're a successful human being, and that literally lets you live on your own terms, surrounded by individuals who are exactly like you, same mindset, same ethos, same values. All of this is part of the journey to self-sovereignty, and we cover and handhold you through it all. You can find me on X. We're very active, on social media as well. We have our YouTube channel. My X is V4BTC. The Bitcoin Way _ is the company's handle. We offer complimentary 30-minute calls for anyone, no obligations. Just call, say hi, ask all your questions. And we're regularly active, whether it's webinars, podcasts, interviews. You'll see me, pretty much everywhere on a broken record, trying to relay this message as much as possible. And again, everyone that comes to us, there are no stupid questions on any of these calls, man. So don't worry about that. We speak basic, plain English. Ask anything you want, we'll answer it all. We stay in touch with you for as long as you like. And, we're all in this together. And like I said earlier, I am extremely bullish and optimistic on the future. Bitcoin is not going anywhere. It's definitely taking over the world. Not as fast as I had hoped, but it's definitely headed in that direction.
Amen to that. That's for sure. And go, so anyone watching, go check the link in the description. We have to support this channel, the free 30-minute call with Tony and his team, supports Tony's company. More importantly, supporting yourself and your family and your future, so that way how to self-custody your Bitcoin, how to buy Bitcoin, how to run a node, just everything that Tony talked about. It's so incredibly important, and that really is the way. That is the way that we are going to get adoption and grow this freedom network. So I appreciate you so much, Tony. This is just always an incredible time hanging out with each other. I wish we could do it all the time, and just appreciate you more than you know. So thank you.
We
sir.
will, man. Thank you for having me, Brandon. It's always a pleasure talking to you, man.
If you like that episode, then you're going to love the playlist we put together for you with our most recent podcast with the top Bitcoiners, sound money, liberty advocates in the world. Go check those out here. We'll see you inside. You're going to love them.